Hello everyone, another video on the old CV. We've got a split CV boot. Don't know if I can focus on that down there. Now, if you're familiar with old Subus, you'll know that this is a common problem, and I only changed this boot about a month ago, and it's already split. But I was expecting it because I've got the wrong kind of boot on this side here. So the ribs are actually touching each other on the bottom side. So rubbing against each other, it's a guaranteed to make it split. Whereas the one on this side, I can't focus on it, I don't think. But down there's the boot that's got a reduced rib. So I need to put the kind with a reduced rib, the diameter of the rib that is, on this side. So I thought I'd just take the opportunity to do a quick how-to. If you haven't ever done this before, it's actually not as hard as you think. It's just a bit messy. So first thing we got to do is get the axle nut cracked loose. This is a 36mm nut. While it's still on the ground, we want to crack that loose. I've already straightened the cotter pin. I'm going to try and reuse it if I can. We're going to sneak that out of there without damaging the alloy wheels. I can't really do that one-handed, but I'm going to whip that out, just crack the nut loose. I'll also crack the wheel nuts loose, and then we'll jack it up, put it on axle stand, and continue from there. So we've got the wheel off. The axle nut is just starting to unthread. While it's still on the axle, I'm just going to bash the end of the axle here to try and break the cone washer that's in there. Oh, it's already loose, never mind. But we've also got to knock the CV shaft out of the hub, which sometimes they're kind of tight, can be pressed in there. I think this one's not too bad, it should just slide out, but still you need a bit of mechanical persuasion to get it to start moving. I've got the jack with a rag to protect the paintwork, a little extension piece that I made myself to cap around the pinch weld there, and I've got a stand on a chassis rail as well, so we're definitely safe. While we're under here, we've got to take the brake caliper off and hang that up there on the spring. Got to release the handbrake cable, so there's a spring clip. Got to take the end out of here, get the cable out of the way. We've got to take the cotter pin out and disconnect the tie rod for the steering, and get the ball joint out from under here. So let's see how much of that I can film. I mean, my hands are going to get pretty filthy doing this. Not ideal for handling a sensitive camera, but yeah, we'll just keep going. Now I've got the handbrake released, so I can take the brake caliper off. I've got the rear wheels chocked up because we're on a tiny bit of a slope. So the two bolts for the brake caliper are 17mm. They go in from the back, so I need something like this. Just use that to crack them loose, and then I will get a ratchet in there. Couple of different hooks. I don't actually know which one I'm going to need. That should come off. So we're also going to disconnect the end of the sway bar from the radius rod here. It's just going to make getting the ball joint apart a lot easier. Now my sway bar bushes are absolutely knackered. And because I don't have the standard radius rods in here anymore, and I don't have the standard Brumby control arms either, the sway bar doesn't actually line up with the radius rod. I end up having to squeeze it back together with a ratchet strap from the other side to get this to go back under there. but you won't have to do that if you've got standard Brumby stuff. Tie rod ends are 17mm as well. Hopefully it comes loose without making the tie rod spin, which it has. Yours might not be this easy if you haven't done this before, or if it's been decades since it was last done, because I've done this like 5,000 Ks ago, less than 5,000 Ks. Everything's they come apart pretty easily. I've got copper punch, a big hammer. Ta-da! Doing this job won't affect your steering geometry or your wheel alignment or anything like that, because these cars are so simple. The only adjustment you've got for wheel alignment is the front toe, and I've got caster adjustment, but you won't have that if you've got standard Brumby stuff. Now there's two ways of getting the ball joint out. I prefer to take the clamping bolt out and leave the ball joint stuck in the control arm, because if you take the ball joint out of the control arm, that's a taper you have to break, whereas if I take this bolt out, take that bolt out, this casting is actually split. I can jam a wedge in there and the control arm basically just falls out with the ball joint still stuck in the control arm. There it goes. Nice pry bar makes the job a lot easier. So I want to avoid removing the two bolts from the radius rod, because those are a prick to get out and also to get back in, so I'll just leave them attached. We don't actually need to take them apart. So right now we've got this just floating about loose. The only thing holding it now is the fact that the axle shaft is stuck in the wheel bearings. The brake disc should come off as well, like so. Do your best to avoid getting your greasy fingers on the brake disc. Ugh. Yum yum. Voila. So we're going to pull the axle shaft out of the gearbox. There's a stub poking out of the gearbox. The axle shaft has a cup. Usually there's a roll pin holding them together. I think because I've done this so often, I get so sick of bashing that roll pin out, I just don't put it in there anymore. So I should be able to just pull this out. There's our prize. Yum yum. Alright, now we can take this over to the workbench and work on this. Right, here we are on the bench. My wonderful high quality workbench. So now, learn in close and careful, real listeningly. I'm going to show you how to get this apart in real time, and I'm going to get messy. So I'm going to snip these clamps if I can. We will release the shmoo. Now, I don't know if you can see in here, there's actually a circlip on this outer cup right near the end. So I'm going to feel around. I can feel it through the grease. And I just found the end of it. This circlip is what prevents the bearing cage from popping out of the joint at full extension. That's that baby right there. And now this cup will come apart. Yum yum. Now the cup is empty. We have to clean this up real good. And we've got all the balls and the cage to deal with. To get the balls out, I can't actually remember. You push the cage up like that. One just fell out there. And then you can just pick them all out. Once you get the first couple out, it becomes really easy. You want to, now the cage is going to come off, you want to pay real close attention to which way it's pointing because it's not symmetric. Actually, yeah, so the cage, will it come off? No, it won't come off until we get the inner race off. To get the inner race off, there's another circlip in here. I should mention these are genuine Subaru OEM shafts. So they got the inner joint has the 6 ball bearing cage. If you've got aftermarket modern ones, you might not have this design, in which case I can't help you, but this is how you do it for this style. These ones are actually much better. They last a lot longer than the tripod style of the cheap, shitty aftermarket stuff you get these days. So I want to find that circlip. It's a snap ring, I should say, really. Go on, there it goes. That's what that looks like. Now the cage will come off, or the inner race I should say. This is also directional. You can tell by the groove on that face, if you can see that. There's a groove on that side, no groove on this side, so the groove faces out. We have to remember that when we reassemble. The cage comes off. Can you see the shape of the cage? It's bigger at one end, so the bigger end is facing out. And we are done. Ta-da! Goes in the bin. And we start cleaning up. This is also a good time to inspect all the races, inner and outer race, the cage and the balls for wear and pitting. And I've replaced this boot. This is probably the 3rd or 4th time I've replaced the boot on this side. I had a really good run where the first boots I ever had, on these shafts lasted about a week. Then I put some boots on, both sides, both inners, and they lasted like more than a year. And then I've gone down a rabbit hole getting the wrong boots, and then I couldn't work out why they kept splitting. So the cage generally, see a shiny spot, some light scratches. I can't feel them with my fingernails, so I'm going to say that's still good. In a race. Again, there's some shiny spots. No real pitting or major wear that I can really see. And there's that groove we were talking about. I've just wiped the bulk grease off this, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's clean enough to reassemble, so I'll show you the next step once we've got most of the grease off. Now I've got everything sort of wiped down, and the best thing to clean I've found to get all this old CV grease off, apart from a big bag of clean rags, is old petrol or gasoline or whatever you want. So I've got this old tin of old petrol. It's years old, been using it for cleaning greasy stuff for ages. Once you've finished with it, you just pour it back in and it lasts for ages. It's just not very healthy. Just don't do this indoors, maybe. So some nasty old fuel there, but just does the best job of cleaning up the old grease. Words to live by. I don't want to go dipping my hands in the petrol there, so I've got a little magnet on a stick. Now we can finally look at the ball bearings, the bearing balls. Looking for any big pock marks or chips or anything like damage. I can't see, but they look pretty good, so I'm going to go with it. the neighbours have got a chihuahua, in case you haven't already noticed. So the cup here takes most of the abuse, I'd say, and maybe you can't really see down in there, but see the shiny marks? My shiny marks are way up into the cup, right down the bottom, so that's because I'm using L series axles on a MY or Brumby front end, and so the Brumby's a lot narrower than a L series in that regard. The L series shafts are longer, so I've got my ball bearings, my bearing balls riding way up inside there. It doesn't seem to have caused much of a problem. I don't really know. It drives fine. It just means I've got more droop and less compression, I guess. Maybe when the suspension compresses, the balls get jammed up into the bottom of the cup, I don't know. There's some shiny spots right down the bottom, so maybe that. Right, so we're about ready to reassemble now. This is the kit I'm using. It's for a Brumby front end, and you'll notice I like to buy a kit instead of separate boots and stuff because it comes with the little bag of grease. I mean, it's just convenient. See the reduced rib? That's because on a Brumby, on the driver's side, the steering shaft comes way too close to the axle boot, so they reduce the rib diameter to clear the steering shaft. But in my application, it's actually also good because my CV angle is too much, really. So it comes down like that. Say, focus. And on the other one, if the ribs are all the same size, these two rub together down the bottom, and that's why I keep blowing them out. I only realised that recently. So the ones that I had which lasted more than a year were actually this style. So that smaller rib comes in handy in my application. If you're doing a Brumby, you need these ones for the steering shaft. Part number. Most important, put this on first. Right, now we can put this on. The large diameter facing out. We can put our inner race on, groove facing out. Our snap ring. Come on. There it goes. So, I have to remind myself how to get the balls back in. It's not hard, but I think you just... Drop the ball. You don't want to drop your balls. Ta-da! If you've seen my video on changing the rear wheel bearings, and I was talking about pushing the grease down into the bearings with your thumb, it kind of creates some hydraulic pressure, which makes it go through and squeeze out around the balls. Right. Keep that out of the dirt and put some in here. There it goes. creating a hydraulic seal with the grease. Alright, anyway. Circlip, very important. And there's a groove on the inner as well. I'm going to line that up. And try and show you how to do these now. This style, you need a special tool, and they're kind of good because you can adjust them to any size you want, really. The tool looks like this. So we get it lined up in the groove all the way around. This could be a challenge to film, actually. This lever here cuts it at the end. This one here winds the tension onto it. So you want to slide the tab through this gap underneath the blade, so you've got to have this handle horizontal. If you have it like this, you can't slide the tab through the blade. So, and then once you've slid through there, you want to go under this pin and then into the slot that's in this handle. So let's do that. That might be enough. Yep, I got it. So before you go crazy winding the tension onto it, just one last check that it's actually in the groove all the way around, and it is. So now we can wind this handle that way. So you don't want to over tighten it either. You bend this over like this before you cut the tab, like that. Now we can hammer that tab down. And then you bend these little tabs over to lock it in place if you can. That's what you want. That's not going anywhere. So we repeat the process for this one. I'm going to do that off camera because it's a lot smaller, a bit more fiddly, but you get the idea. New boot, new grease, new clamps. The shaft's going to be spinning in this direction, so we've got the tabs facing that way. Now it's time to put this back on the car, and it's just assembly's a reverse of disassembly, so I'll meet you back over there and when we're all done. Now, reassembly, yeah, the reverse of disassembly, but it is always harder to get things back together than it was to take them apart. But I just thought I'd bring in on this little factoid. When you're doing the cone washer and this spring washer is actually directional on a Brumby. Cone washer first, of course. Also, you want to check the taper of this cone for any huge wear, dings, dents and whatnot. You want it to be nice and smooth. Now, this washer here, it's actually dished in one direction. I'm not sure if you can pick it up on the camera, but if you hold it in your hands and look at it, you can tell it's dished in one direction. So you want the dish, the convex side, to be pointing towards the axle nut. The concave side, which is the hollow side, the concave side, faces towards the brake disc. Can you see that? Chrome socket. Don't do this. I just cinch that up a bit because it makes everything else a bit easier. Anyway, I'll keep going with this and we'll do a wrap up right at the end. Now, to do the axle nut up here, you know, you read online comments of people say you need to put a 6-foot breaker bar on it and jump up and down on the breaker bar to do this up. That is wrong. You do not need to do it up that tight. The spec in this factory service manual is 198 Newton meters. I've got a 200 Newton meter torque wrench here, and look, one hand. I don't even have to put my whole body weight on it, man. So if you do put a big extension pipe on it down to the back wheel and start jumping up and down on it, you will strip the thread on the end of the axle shaft, and you do not need to do that. So 198 Newton meters, it looks like I've got a hole lined up here already, which is nice. The book says like 198 Newton meters plus maybe like 15 degrees, I think, don't quote me on that, to line up the next hole, you know, to get the cotter pin to go through. And I believe in this shaft anyway, there might be 2 holes at 90 degrees. So if I can get the pin in now, I'm just going to call it good. You should never loosen it to line up a cotter pin. Only tighten it up. And yeah, I've had it before where I've had to tighten it up with the breaker bar to get the hole to line up just so, but still, this breaker bar here, I don't know what that is, like 50 centimeters or something. You know, I can do that just with my hands, not jumping up and down with my whole body weight. So yeah, just a word of warning, don't strip your axle nut threads, because if you do that, you need a new axle shaft. That'll ruin your day. And there you have it. She's all back together, all torqued up. Only thing left to do, good as new. Probably should take this opportunity to wipe up all the grease off the firewall from the old boot splitting. You can really see where that reduced rib, if it was as big as the other rib, it would be touching, so that's why she split. And you can see all the mess under here that I've got to wipe up. Bloody hell, must have been split for a little while. More rust protection. Anyway, I'll finish this up, put all this crap back in the shed, and you've watched another old Subi video on my channel. Thanks for watching, and I hope this helped. If you've never done it before, it's not as hard as you think, as long as you've got the right tools and the know-how. And anyway, I'll catch you on the next one. Catch you around.